Dr. Nadell, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member Scott, for inviting me today. I'm Pamela Nadell. I'm a professor of Jewish history at American University, and I'm currently writing the book Antisemitism, an American Tradition, supported by a National Endowment for the Humanities Public Scholar Award. And I'm delighted to be here today because this gives me an opportunity to thank Congress for sustaining through the NEH scholarship essential to understanding our nation's past. This is the 3rd time I have testified about this topic before Congress. The first was in 2017, just 3 months after white supremacists chanting "Jews will not replace us" paraded through the University of Virginia, brandishing torchlights, echoing Nazi stormtroopers strutting through Germany in the 1930s. I emphasize this because the anti-Semitism igniting on campuses today is not new. It is part of a long history of American anti-Semitism. While anti-Semitism is difficult to define, historical examples convey some of its contours. Anti-Semites believe that Jews have been corrupted by money since Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and they've employed code names for avaricious Jews: Shylock, Rothschild, and in the 21st century, George Soros. Anti-Semites believe Jews conspire to destroy Christian Western civilization. These conspiracy theories gained currency in the 1920s when Henry Ford's newspaper ran the series, The International Jew, the world's foremost problem. Today, the charge that the Jews are internationalists has been replaced by the dog whistle globalist, implying that Jews are the puppet masters of the worldwide order. Across American history, people from all walks of life have conveyed anti-Semitic ideas since 1654, when New Amsterdam Governor Peter Stuyvesant tried to expel, and I quote, "this deceitful race, such hateful enemies and blasphemers of the name of Christ." Now, more than 350 years later, we have just marked the 5th anniversary of the murders at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue. On city streets, abuse is hurled at Orthodox Jews, and swastikas are graffitied on dorm doors and also at the State Department. The long history of American anti-Semitism left its mark in higher education. Quotas on the admission of Jewish students began in the Ivy League in the 1920s and spread to more than 700 private colleges and universities. The campus has also wrestled with the challenge of anti-Semitic speech before this fall. In the early 1990s, Holocaust deniers took out full-page ads in college newspapers. Those ads launched furious debates about free speech on campus and also helped propel Holocaust courses into the university to respond to the disinformation. Anti-Israel invective has been flaring on campus well before this fall. I could look back more than 20 years. In October 2000, 200 students at the University of Michigan yelled, "Israel is a fascist state," and protested a Hillel teach-in. But the barbarity of the Hamas terror of October 7th adds a terrible new chapter to Jewish history. Anyone who claims to care about human rights should denounce these horrors. That so many on campus not only did not, but that they justified the savagery in name of opposition to Israel has caused Jews around the world deep anguish. While I deplore all hateful speech, anti-Semitic speech remains in America protected. Free speech stands at the core of the liberal arts education, an education which almost every member of Congress benefited from when they were students. But free speech does not permit harassment, discrimination, bias, threats, or violence in any form. And when they occur, our institutions, and not just the campus, but our nation, they have in place mechanisms to respond. The American Jewish community has long strategized about how to reduce anti-Semitism. Their efforts received a stunning confirmation when the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism was published. I believe this is the first time any nation has developed such a document. I urge Congress to do everything in its power to support the national strategy and also the forthcoming national strategy to counter Islamophobia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Nadell, in your testimony on page 8, you talked about President Biden's U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, and in particular, you talked about the use of Title VI of the U.S. Civil Rights Act in terms of being an effective tool on campuses to combat anti-Semitism. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
So Title VI allows for responding to some of the issues that the presidents of these universities, but also, frankly, of most universities around the nation, it seems at the moment, have been dealing with in terms of when anti-Semitism moves beyond free speech, moves beyond rhetoric, and it involves harassment or intimidation. The issue is that the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Education needs to be fully funded in order to implement the U.S. strategy to counter anti-Semitism. And I just want to comment about this strategy because it is an extraordinary document. It has actions for the White House to carry out, or that division, but it has issues for Congress to carry out, which I have a sense Congress has not been carrying out, and it also has major charges to whole of society to respond to anti-Semitism, some of which we are hearing is already happening on the campuses. The problem is they don't make headlines because they're not a bunch of protesters.
Thank you. And again, it's important to note that document was released back in May of 2023, certainly before this committee and the outrageous events of October 7th. And the ranking member mentioned in his opening remarks that, at the same time we're holding this hearing, we're also now still trying to get a budget passed for fiscal year 2024. The majority in the House reported out their budget, which, as he mentioned, carried a cut for the Office of Civil Rights. To be more specific, it's a 25% cut, $35 million out of their rather small budget, $72 million lower than what the president had asked for. We had a witness here again 2 weeks ago from who worked for almost 20 plus years at ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. They've been around for 110 years fighting anti-Semitism in this country. And again, she talked about the fact that, that type of cut is just going to cripple the ability of the anti-Semitism police, if you want to sort of look at it that way, in terms of trying to stop this type of activity on campuses. And again, I was just wondering if you had sort of what your view is of a cut in terms of the impact of the Office of Civil Rights to do its job.
I think the cut is absolutely devastating. And what I would also remind everyone is that the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Education does not only focus on anti-Semitism. It focuses on all forms of hate. And I would guess, I actually tried to find this information but was unable to do so, but I would guess that the majority of complaints are not coming from Jewish students, although maybe now, given what happened since October 7th, I would guess the majority of the complaints are actually coming from people of color and from others who have faced terrible bias. So it is unthinkable, unconscionable to make that cut.
So, Dr. Nadell, what are some of the best ways that colleges and universities can work to make their campuses welcome, safe, and inclusive spaces for all students in light of incidences of hate speech and discrimination, while also adhering to First Amendment principles?
So thank you for the question. I think there are different forms and different venues for expanding this discussion of the very difficult issue that has sparked and ignited the anti-Semitism or the outbursts on college campuses that we've been seeing since October 7th. So one form, obviously, is the classroom, although I would remind the members of the committee that the reality is that most students during their college career, they take a handful of courses. Many of them are studying STEM, and most of them are actually never in classrooms where they're hearing a discussion of issues like anti-Semitism or the conflict in Israel and Palestine. So that's the first thing that I would point out. So we academics can continue to foster those conversations, and we need to take them outside of the classroom. I think the other place where there can really be a lot of work done that would be very successful is on the side of student life on campus. And so student organizations are, they range broadly and widely on the campus, everything from a gardening club to obviously some of the student organizations that have been involved in the protests against Israel. So these are other places.
I don't want to cut you off, but I have to get another question in.
Yeah, sure.
So this question is to actually all the presidents, but I did want Dr. Nadell to answer first. Students should be able to express their views and opinions without fear of retaliation. How are you balancing the protection of free speech, academic freedom, with the need to also oppose normalizing anti-Semitism attitudes that are radical and dangerous? And if we could just briefly answer that, I want to hear from the presidents on this.
Sure. So just briefly, obviously, we need to protect free speech, but we also need to protect the safety of our students on campus. And you use the word normalizing anti-Semitism, and the problem is anti-Semitism has been normalized in the nation, not just on campus.
Thank you.
Professor Nadell, these challenges of protecting free speech while denouncing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all forms of hate, that's not unique to MIT or to the institutions that are here. Can you speak to the same question of the most effective ways to facilitate education and dialogue to ease tensions at other colleges and in general?
The most effective ways, and obviously I very much appreciate your question, because this is happening across the United States on colleges and campuses, small and large. And the most effective ways are to recognize the many different levels and mechanisms for facilitating these dialogues at the student level, at the faculty level, at the administrative level, and bringing how to unite the campus, bringing the campus together. That's what we're all trying to do, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you all so much for your work. I yield back.
Talk to me about the need, not just for you all as leaders in higher education, but every single person in this room's responsibility to fight anti-Semitism and anti-hate in all its forms. And I just want to add, we have an original sin in our nation of slavery and discrimination. That sin continues to evolve as segregation, separation, and a lack of understanding and empathy of knowledge of each other. Can you just speak briefly to all of that? We'll start here and go down the line.
Yes. I want to add that I'm so glad that you raised K through 12, because everybody here is talking as if what has happened on the college campus happened de novo, and those kids came to campus and they never had an education before. So we need to be teaching about anti-Semitism, not just the Holocaust, anti-Semitism and racism in America.
And our kids live in segregated communities. So you have white kids living with white kids, black kids living with... They never interact with each other. They don't go to school together. They don't know each other. So, of course, hate is going to be a major part of our society if we continue to have segregation in our communities, in our homes. I'm sorry, please.
Congressman, I so appreciate what you asked.
Social media's impact on anti-Semitism and hatred, both in academia and as you see it in your research.
Thank you for the question. Social media has been probably the most destructive force for spreading anti-Semitism ever imaginable, certainly in my own lifetime. When a pop star like Kanye West can put out a few messages that are anti-Semitic, and he has millions and millions of followers, and in the wake of that, Jewish students were also feeling terribly unsafe and insecure. And we have seen this over and over, and we've seen it harnessed not only from the left, but we've also seen it harnessed from the right. Social media and various chat forums, various different platforms were used to create the Unite the Right rally in 2017. And of course, the man who's been convicted of murdering 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue also posted on social media that he wasn't waiting any longer and he was going in. So it's been terrible.